Well, what about this whole reaction of the Pakistani press? I think in one article you quoted the Nation magazine in Pakistan saying, quote, "The presence of the world's most wanted terrorists in such a strategically sensitive city is beyond the understanding of a sane man." Is that typical of the reaction in the national press there?
It's reasonably typical, yeah. I mean, I think the outrage in the Pakistani press, especially the Urdu press, has focused a lot more on the violation of sovereignty and this question of, how Americans are able to fly helicopters into our country without us noticing, and could this happen again? Specifically, could it happen again to, say, our nuclear installations? But yeah, I mean, on the question of were our security services complicit in some way with hiding Osama bin Laden? That's a question you've seen really openly expressed in the Pakistani press, which is kind of remarkable, actually. The Pakistani press is relatively free, but I think this incident has galvanized some sort of, especially liberal sections of the media, and encouraged them to speak openly about whether or not their own government is pursuing a double policy on this. And that sort of openness has already been there, but this is definitely a watershed moment politically. I think you're starting to see people talk about that a lot more boldly than they were before.
And finally, Graeme Smith, the issue of drone attacks. I mean, on the one hand, you have the U.S. moving in, as President Obama promised he would even before he was president, if they knew where Osama bin Laden is, with or without the approval of Pakistan. But you've been writing also about the drone attacks. While it was just said in the clips we just heard that Osama bin Laden is not popular in Pakistan, neither is the United States, with the majority of Pakistanis considering the United States the enemy, even as it gives the Pakistani government something like $3 billion a year.
Well, yeah, but giving money to the government is very different from being popular with the people. The government itself here is not particularly popular at the moment either. People are always very reassured when I tell them I'm Canadian, not American, in Pakistan. It is not a very great thing to be American on the streets of Pakistan at the moment. Now, on the other hand, I think that the next generation of Pakistanis is very much, they may hate me for saying this, but they're very similar in some ways to the next generation of Indians. They're growing up watching satellite television. They're growing up learning English. And you may find that within a generation that, Pakistan, like India, is much more aligned with the interests of the Western world than, for instance, China will be.
And on the issue of the aid, as you pointed out, giving money to the government doesn't mean that it's supporting the Pakistani people. We're seeing this Arab Spring where despots who are shored up by the United States are falling one by one. Is there that feeling in Pakistan that the U.S. government is shoring up unpopular leaders and has sort of put a coat of armor around them? And what does this mean for the war in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I mean, certainly U.S. support for the regime in Islamabad does not make it any more popular with ordinary people. The idea of American money and American weapons coming in and being used to prop up Islamabad certainly does not endear the government at all, especially in places like Balochistan, which has active insurgency going on, places like Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which also has an active insurgency. So overall, though, I think the events of the last week will be a net positive for the region as a whole, especially when it comes to changing the debate in America about Afghanistan. I spent 3 years living in Kandahar, and I couldn't help feeling that American fears about terrorism were driving some policy in southern Afghanistan that was not necessarily helpful for the people living there. And so I think, especially my friends in Kandahar, my friends in Quetta, those who believe that Osama bin Laden is dead are breathing a sigh of relief, because they think maybe the Americans are going to relax and go home.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned your time you spent in Kandahar. Your sense of whether the death of Osama bin Laden will increase pressure on the United States to leave Afghanistan, or whether there will be this attempt to say, hey, we've got to continue this war until the last member of al-Qaeda is either in jail or dead?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in U.S. politics. I'm much more at home with the tribes of southern Afghanistan, so I can't really tell you, how that will play out domestically in America. But that is certainly how people are viewing it on the ground. Some of my Christian friends were telling me, look, we think that America has staged this event because we think they had Osama all along, but this is the moment when they want to leave Afghanistan, so they've chosen this moment. Obviously that's typical sort of wild conspiracy talk that you hear among the Pushtun tribes. But yeah, I mean, this is being seen by them certainly as a sign that America intends to withdraw.
And finally, Graeme Smith, the debate in the United States about whether President Obama should show the picture of Osama bin Laden dead. He has said he will not. What is the feeling in Pakistan?
I mean, nobody here really believes anything the Americans say, to be honest. So on the streets of Pakistan, they want proof, they want evidence. And from all sides, not just the Americans. They want to see documents, they want to see photos, they want to know exactly what was up at that compound, and they're not going to take our word for it.
Graeme Smith, I want to thank you for being with us. Foreign correspondent for the Globe and Mail in Canada, has won 3 National Newspaper Awards, Canada's highest prize for print journalism, speaking to us from Islamabad. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace